Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Next speaker is Deputy Bríd Smith, who has 10 minutes.
Good morning. First of all, thanks, Deputy, for bringing forward the bill. I'm getting my head around it. I received the briefing notes from Coalition 2030, so it gives a context for why this is coming before the Oireachtas, and says that the Joint Committee on Environment and Climate Action, in its report on the examination of the recommendations of the Citizens' Assembly on biodiversity loss, recommends the establishment of a new Ombudsman for future generations, with the resources of an office or a Future Generations Commission to protect the long-term interests of human and ecological well-being for current and future generations. And I completely get why that particular committee would have made that recommendation, because we're in such a crisis on biodiversity loss and climate. And that crisis means that we are losing 1 million species, every couple of years are disappearing off the planet, the nature planet, and off the natural planet. And on top of that, the Earth is warming up faster than scientists ever thought it would be. And the consequences of that are the disastrous floods, droughts, famines, tidal sea rise levels, and the disastrous consequences on human life and the natural life. So I can understand it, but I want to make a comment on why I think it should not be necessary, and why I think it's been made necessary. And it's because when this briefing note says, if we could ensure that public bodies and politicians are required to have long-term lens on their plans, what if we had an office and a person with the sole responsibility for ensuring our country's policies had positive effects for today and tomorrow? Well, I'm sorry, but I think every politician elected to this House and beyond should be concerned about tomorrow anyway, and probably already have it in their manifestos what they think about what is going to happen tomorrow. And each day this week we've had another report published in this country from Bernardo's, from the housing bodies, etc., about the impact of poverty and neglect on children. And the latest one was looking at the impact of children living in poor housing conditions, overcrowded housing conditions, and it talked about the levels of depression, alienation, the lack of concentration on schooling, the poor health outcomes. Now, that's happening now to what are the future generations. In a certain sector of society, it is true, not the entire society is affected by it, but the most impoverished and the most alienated sectors of society are cruelly feeling the cost of living rises on food, on clothes, on essentials. Parents, as Bernardo's have shown, cannot afford to give children the money to go to swimming lessons or dance classes or on the school trip. Parents themselves are going without food and going without a social life. And I was at a meeting of the Senior Citizens Parliaments during the week, a public meeting, where Age Action illustrated how the spending power of those on pensions has depleted by 25% in less than 10 years. And each time there's a budget, the government give the pensioners another tenner, or if you're lucky, a bit more, maybe $12.50. If you're unlucky, you'll get a fiver. So we are failing. The political class is failing, not just future generations, but current generations and those who have retired and those who have built this state before us. And I don't think the answer to that lies in the creation of an ombudsman for the future. I think it lies on cop-on for the present, and realise that what we have in society is a neoliberal attitude to democracy. It's not that democracy itself has entirely failed. It's that democracy has adopted a neoliberal approach to running society. And by that I mean that everything must now, in the here and now, make a profit for a certain cohort. They're called the 1% globally, but that cohort make vast profits, whether it's off fossil fuels, off vulture funds by owning property and buying up more property, whether it's on bank shares, whether it's on developing a fast new car like Tesla and Elon Musk. Whatever it is, there is a 1% that are hurtling us towards a disaster, and they are given every which leeway by modern democracy, which recognises neoliberalism, the profit comes before people and planet method, as the only one that is viable. And unfortunately for this planet, all of the political class, including the party the deputies belong to, have bought into that. And that's why when there were young people of Future Generations in the gallery earlier, it made me think back on the Friday for Future demonstrations, which I think has inspired a lot of this, where, you know, school children, in line with Greta Thunberg's activity, were outside parliaments every Friday shouting, "We need system change, not climate change." And I think they understood by system change that the economic system, the way we fuel our world, fossil fuels being taken out of the ground, but the economic system at its heart is not working, and we need to change that system. And that's why they were screaming at us. So fair enough if the deputy thinks, and if the Fridays for Future people think that that requires a special office of an ombudsman for future generations, then we wouldn't oppose this bill, but we would seek to seriously amend it. And it would imply, by its very title, that that office should be run by people under the age of 16, because otherwise you're going to have it skewed in favour of those adults who are currently making a mess of the economic, political and environmental world that we live in. The Deputy and the Minister talked about an agenda that considers and addresses poverty, hunger, food systems, health, education, gender equality, clean water, sanitation, energy, economic growth, decent jobs. The list goes on, right up to climate change, oceans, ecosystems, peace and justice. Surely to God, deputies, that's our job now, is to address all of those. And if it's not happening, then we're failing. The political class is failing the future generations, and that is what needs to be addressed. So I look forward to the Summit of the Future from the UN in September. It should make for interesting contributions from those who currently run the world. But I'll just tell you, there is a difference between neoliberalism and how things can be done. My sister lives in Malmö City in Sweden, and we all in the past have admired Sweden for its approach to planning, to how it develops its country, to every way it runs the economic and political system there. And her neighbour is a town planner. And there is not a plan that she works on in that city that doesn't start with where are the schools, where are the transport, where are the clinics, where are the playgrounds, where are the parks. That all comes first and the homes come in later. I've never, ever seen that happen in Dublin or in Ireland. And I would imagine that that's the norm across Europe and other developed countries, that you put in the facilities, you plan for the future, you think about the generation that are going to grow up there, that are going to live there. Never happens in Ireland. Why? Because our planning is led by developers, by their needs, by their greed and drive for profits, not by the future generations and what they need. And so what I think we need in this country is a wake-up call. And it's not to follow Sweden, because unfortunately most of the other systems in Sweden, including care of the elderly and creche facilities, are moving towards a neoliberal model and are privatising a lot of the public services. But we need a wake-up call to say, let's go back to when and how all our public services could be run in the interests of the public, in the interests of people, of children, of the future, not in the interests of profit. And I think that that's what needs to be done. So I am keen on seeing this bill progress. I'm keen on amending it, and I'm keen on the discussions and the dialogue that we'll have around it, because, to be honest, what it's trying to do is put a plaster on a gaping wound, rather than addressing, as the young people said, what we need is system change. It's trying to put another body in, and probably run by older men and women, that will look to what do future generations want. I think it's going about it, I won't use the bad language in here, but the wrong way around. But I'm not going to go against it. I'll seek to amend it so that it recognises a different type of approach to politics, not one that says we've failed, so let's try and put a plaster on a gaping wound. Thank you.